Welcome to Bucs Insider, presented by Verizon. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And man, it is good to have a victory week to talk about.
It is.
That was a fun one. It was a good game. It was a much needed win. And I mean, man, it just feels like some fresh air got breathed into the building after what had been going on. It was a big win with some big performances by a lot of different guys.
Yeah.
We all love a victory Monday, a victory week. What stood out to you about what this game meant to the team and some of the performances in it?
Well, one thing about it is there were 6 games this week, I believe, that ended in walk-off field goals.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Including Monday night. So for us, it's kind of rare. It was nice to have that fourth quarter where you could breathe a little bit because the defense really bounced back. And you know, Coach Bowles described the game in Houston as a clunker. You know, I think it was out of character for the Bucs defense, but he said they had a lot of pride, and these are guys that, you know, wanted to prove that that was the exception and not the way this defense is. And they came out, they played very aggressively. They were particularly aggressive on first down because one of the goals was to keep Derrick Henry from picking up 4, 5, 6 yards on first downs and putting them in good down and distance situations and allowing them to establish the run and get him going downhill. So they really wanted to win first down, and you may remember how the game started. The first play was a 15-yard completion. Second play was a direct snap, 15-yard run. So like, we are not accomplishing this goal right now. But there were 25 more first and 10s, or one that was a first and 9 because it was first and goal. And the Titans got a total of 40 yards on those 25 plays. So that's how you kept them behind the sticks, and they were not able to convert a single third down that was longer than 6 yards.
It's incredible. That was a much needed, yeah, like you said, a rebound game.
It was big.
Which was very, very big, especially going into this week. And then, of course, you know, it's funny, as I watch games, I watch them a little differently than most fans because I'm just thinking about all of the different shows and interviews and things and what's going to make for good content, what we're talking about. You know, the moment I saw Tristan Wirfs pick up that football,
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is going to be a really fun thing to get to talk about. And also, shameless plug, I did have him on our Bucs Total Access show with myself and Allie Marpet. We talked about it. It was hilarious and wonderful. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. Look at the big man. Look at the stiff arm he tried to throw, which was amazing. And we also had Baker shouting him out of like, look at this.
The scoop was so smooth.
It was.
He's just, it's kind of dumb how athletic he is in so many different ways.
Is. Which that was something funny we talked about on the show that Allie was like, I remember when he came in as a rookie and I was just mad. I was just mad that everything was so easy for him. He's like, bro, make this look harder, you know? And we asked Tristan, we were like, you know, typically they teach offensive linemen to just fall on it, cover it up, grenade style. And we were like, did that occur to you? And he was like, absolutely not. I was scooping and going no matter what.
It would have almost been sad if he had scored because it wouldn't have counted.
Which, for anybody that doesn't understand, please explain this rule because I am not even sure that all the players even kind of knew what was going on in that moment. So tell us about this rule.
In the last 2 minutes of either half, if a player on offense fumbles, a teammate can recover the ball, but they can't advance it. So it comes back to the spot of the fumble, but you do regain possession. The point is to not allow people to purposely fumble when they're desperate, and that's all they can do. That
only in the final 2 minutes.
Yeah, and that obviously wasn't the case. Yeah, because you would never purposely fumble. It's too risky in other situations. But it comes from decades ago, the play they call the Holy Roller, where it was a Raiders game and the guy fumbled and it went all the way to the end zone and they recovered it, and it was like the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
So it's considered unfair for obvious reasons, and so you can't advance it. So Tristan may know the rule, but didn't necessarily think of it at the time, or even know maybe they're in the last 2 minutes of the half.
Yeah, you see that football out there, and suddenly you just start dreaming of glory, you know?
Got eyes at the painted grass.
Yes. And also, I was really excited to see a couple young guys get in there and make some big moves that we've been talking about, that the increased need for some more pass rush, and from your outside linebackers in particular. And, man, a couple young guys really stepped up in this game. Well,
Marquise Watts got to play for the first time. He'd been inactive or a DNP in every other game before, but Josh Hayes, the defensive back, was out with a concussion, and Carlton Davis was out, and we brought up Keenan Isaac to replace him, but there were no other defensive backs to put in to make active. So they had a spot, and they could keep a sixth, for the first time, they could keep a sixth outside linebacker active on game day, and it was a hot day, so it made a lot of sense. And they kept all 6 up, including Marquise Watts, and they played them all. Cam Gill, Anthony Nelson, everybody. Marquise Watts got his first 11 snaps. He had a tackle, and he had the big hit on the quarterback that led to the sort of pop-up throw that Antoine Winfield was able to intercept after we had dropped about 4 other possible interceptions.
That was so infuriating. I can't imagine for them how they felt, especially
to be like, again?
Yeah, the Levante Antoine one earlier. I felt like this was karma paying back Antoine for knowing that, like, he'd had that one earlier, but then he and Levante ran into each other, that it was like the whole ball don't lie idea of like had to repay him
ball finds energy
for this. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but Levante didn't get his.
I know. We'll just hope that it's another week. That the game just ran out in
Levante
time.
had another one where he kind of had a leaping, almost caught it. But in any case, Marquise Watts had a nice first showing. When asked if that meant he was going to get more opportunities at the beginning of the week, Coach Bowles says it's possible. On Wednesday, a similar question kind of made it sound like he's going to get some more chances. And then Yaya Diaby, he's played every game, obviously, and I think looked pretty good throughout his rookie season, but he's getting incrementally more and more playing time. And in this last game, he actually had the second most snaps after Shaq Barrett and before Joe Tryanchenko among those 6 outside linebackers, partially because Coach says he's very strong and he's good against the run, and obviously that was a run-first team we were playing. But he made lots of plays in the passing game. He had 2 quarterback hits, he had a sack, he had 2 tackles for loss. So it was just a really nice game for Yaya, and I just think they're trying to find ways to get him on the field as much as possible.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that's a good strategy. All right, so now Mike Evans, what a game for him. And again, even with some drops, he still had an incredible game, which again speaks to what Mike Evans can do, that he can have a couple drops and still have, 143 yards. And the touchdown to me was just one of the most Mike Evans plays I've ever seen. Because I felt like it was such a cool response to the drop of like, oh, I have to get in the end zone now since that happened. Just the mental toughness, the physical toughness. I was like, this is peak Mike Evans right here.
That was a good one too that we just saw there, the 43-yarder. That was right before the pass that he dropped in the end zone. Baker said he threw that ball quicker than the play necessarily called for, and so he was worried Mike wasn't going to get his head around in time, and indeed he didn't look until the last second and had to kind of adjust to make that really impressive sliding catch. But it's Mike Evans, and I think we probably talk about him every week, and we talk about the fact that we talk about him every week, but he just keeps
making us talk about him.
I don't even do the graphic this week about him bumping up another slot all-time touchdowns. He's tied for 16th now, but I thought this one was kind of interesting. We haven't looked at this before. He's averaging 17.1 yards per catch, which is higher than his normal average, his career average, and amongst all the players that have at least 40 catches.
And look at those names.
Look at those names, right? I mean, he's above Tyreek Hill in terms of yards per catch, which hard to believe.
Yeah.
So those are some of the best receivers in the game, and obviously Mike is one of the best receivers in the game, but he's really making a lot of downfield plays, a lot more than last year as an example, because Baker is holding on to the ball a little longer and letting him get downfield, and he just has that deceptive speed where if you saw some of those highlights when the camera was on him during his route, he's just running right past that guy. And I mean, is Mike Evans known as the fastest receiver in the league? Obviously, he's very fast.
He is, yes.
But he's deceptively fast. He just eats up the ground with those long strides.
I also think what we've been able to do in the screen game, and this kind of goes to our next point we wanted to talk about, the screen game, the dump-offs to Rachaad is going to help guys like Mike. I'm really starting to see where the fact that our run game wasn't really going earlier this season, so it was a lot easier for defenses to hone in on Mike and Chris. But now that Rachaad is, getting over 100 yards from scrimmage, either because of the run game, because of the pass game, he's holding those defenses honest to where now you're going to see guys like that help. So it's not only great for Rachaad, but it's great for everybody on that offense.
It's like the screens are like basically part of the run game, since the run game still is only producing about 78 yards per game. The screen sort of takes place of that and has the effect on the defense, the gravity that he pulls away from the receivers. And that I think we'll probably see, or we did see the clip of his touchdown there, just as an aside. He got up to 20.7 miles per hour according to Next Gen stats on that, and that's the fastest he's been clocked at in his entire. Oh, look at this little Next Gen graphic here.
That's cool.
That's cool. That's the fastest he's run on any play in his career so far.
Also, if we can keep that running for a minute, if you look at the numbers, watch the Cody Mauk little dot.
Well, okay. Oh, how far downfield he's getting?
And how he was trucking, too.
He was down there, wasn't he?
He was trucking.
Okay, well, let's run it one more time, and I'll point out number 70, the center. Watch the 70 dot coming out here pulling, and he gets the first key block right there that allows him to cut inside. So just a really well-executed play. And so he's been catching a lot of passes and getting a lot of yards on them in recent weeks, and now he's up to second amongst all running backs in the NFL right now in receiving yards, and you see who he's right underneath there.
What a great title for a graphic, by the way.
I know, I was out in space.
Really appreciate
He's a force out in space.
I really like that.
Thank you.
But
we're playing McCaffrey this week. The two highest producing receiving yardage backs in the league are going to be on the same field.
Man.
And Alvin Kamara's he missed some time, so he might be ahead of him if not for that.
In
But
terms of
still,
games, yeah.
8 games. Okay, so 9 games in, roughly halfway, he might get to 600, 700 receiving yards. That'd be amongst the best we've ever had.
That's great. So now, I think it's great to think about the fact that it was tough during that stretch of losses, and you started thinking, oh man, like what's going to happen? What does this mean about the season? But the NFC South, very much up for grabs. So let's talk a little bit about where the Bucs stand, what the rest of the season is going to look like in terms of trying to chase that NFC championship.
Yeah, thanks to the 3-1 start, even though we had the 4-game losing streak, now that we get another win, we're right there in the thick of it. And as you see here, Carolina would have to make quite a rebound to get back into it, but otherwise, that's real tight. And you see that both New Orleans and Atlanta are on a bye this week. So now the Bucs will even up with the rest of the division, as will Carolina, and everybody will be the same number of games, and we won't have to say a half game out or a game and a half or whatever. But if the Buccaneers win in San Francisco, they'll be tied for first. And since we beat New Orleans in week 4, they would have the tiebreaker edge, so you could say basically they're in first place. If the Bucs lose, they'll be a game out, tied with Atlanta. Not what we want, obviously, but either way, that's still a very tight race. And the Bucs have a chance to come out of this weekend back on top of the NFC South.
So let's talk about this game against San Francisco. We know they are a heck of a team. They've got a lot of great guys on both sides of the ball, and we know last year didn't quite go according to plan. So what are the things that you feel like, looking at each of these teams, what could be the difference to make sure that last year doesn't repeat itself?
You need to limit the yards after the catch. They have so many weapons. So basically, talk about Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. There's others.
Just those?
Yeah,
just those,
there's the fullback too, and there's others. But those 4 probably represent the most varied but impressive group of pass catchers and runners of any offense we're going to face. And so all of those guys, but particularly McCaffrey and Deebo and even George Kittle, are really good, and they're schemed up well by Kyle Shanahan at getting yards after the catch. So Coach Bowles stresses for the defense that the tackling needs to be strong. They break a lot of tackles, Kittle and McCaffrey do, and they just get in an open space because of a good scheme. So we need to gang tackle, we need to tackle well when we have the opportunity, and we just have to be on the keys. So the opposite of what happened in Houston. They need to know where they're supposed to be and be there, as Coach Bowles would say. So much better at that last week, obviously. And then on defense, you just have to try to slow down that pass rush. Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, they've got all these guys that are either former first-round picks or highly coveted free agents, and Bosa and Hargrave in particular are an unbelievable inside-outside force. They don't have a giant number of sacks considering all that talent, but they are 5th in the league in pressure percentage on the quarterback, and pressures can be just as effective at blowing up a drive as a sack. So, obviously Tristan Wirfs and Luke Edeke have played awesome so far this year. Hopefully they can continue to keep those guys off of Baker Mayfield. I think that would be the key.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. We will see you again next week to break down that game out in the other Bay Area. We'll see you then.